So we made it. It looks like we made it. Hare Krishna. Welcome to the Sunday Bhagavatam class. We're already in May. It's May 3rd, 2020, in Coronado. So we have some very interesting topics today. I'm going to first actually talk for a moment about the last verse we did last week, because it's there's a philosophical point which is unusual here. In the Bhagavatam, well, first, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So last week, 1:6:28 was Prayujamane Mai Tang Sudhang Bhagavating Tanu, which means that as I was acquiring a pure godly body, that's literally what it says. Shuddhang means pure, Bhagavatim from Bhagavan, godly, and Tanum, body. As I was acquiring that pure godly body, which is taken to be like a spiritual body, Arabdha Karma Nirvano, Nyapata Panchabhotika, my material body, which is described here as Panchabhotika. Bhuta means, in this case, a material element. So Panchabhotika means that which is made of the five gross elements: earth, water, fire, air, and sky. So that material body made of the five elements, because it was Arabdha Karma Nirvana, that all of the accumulated karma was finished. I had burned through all the accumulated karma of that body. And so that body, which was a material body, nyapatat, literally it fell down. It fell away. You could say it. That body fell away. In other words, in the normal way of talking, I died, or in the sense I lost that material body. And I acquired a pure godly body. So that's all very inspiring. So what is the complication? The complication is, the next verse says, Kalpanta idamadaya shayanayam basi danbataha shisha ishyor anupranam bibi shantaraham vibo. That kalpante, at the end of the kalpa, so Narada has that pure godly body, that Shuddham Bhagavating Tanum. And then kalpante, at the end of the kalpa, taking this or gathering this, which here this means the material world, shayanayam vasi udanbataha, as he was lying in the water, in the great causal ocean, or the Garba ocean, Shisha Ishor, he was desiring to go into that yoga nidra. In other words, this is Lord Vishnu, the creator of the universe, going through the cycles that Krishna describes in the Bhagavad Gita, where the universes are created for a certain time and then they're withdrawn. And so here it's time to withdraw the universes. It's like, okay, this game is over for now, and now we're going to take a break. So that's what Krishna does. He lets the conditioned souls sort of, I guess, thrash about, try their best in the material world. They're trying to enjoy, they're trying to learn. And then after going through this for some time, in many lifetimes, it's understandable that souls they need a break. They need a time out. They're tired. It can be pretty exhausting mentally to go through all your karma and, slogging around and this body and that body. And so souls need a break to rest and kind of get ready for another session. So then the universe, the creation's withdrawn, and the souls, you could say, sleep within the body of the Lord, then they come out again and try again. So then when this was happening, when the Lord wanted to lie down and withdraw the universe, then Vivishe, Antarahang Vivo, I entered within. Vivishe means I entered, antar, within, aham, I, Vivo, within the Lord, who was, the Lord wanted to lie down, so then he was lying down, ambasi, and so I entered with his breathing, because obviously if this inconceivably gigantic form of Vishnu was exhaling, it couldn't be hard to enter, because he's blowing out this inconceivably large, powerful wind. And so then when he's inhaling anupranam, following his breath, I entered. But so the problem is, what's Narada doing there? Because Narada's a liberated soul at this time. He has a Shuddham Bhagavatim Tanum. He has this pure, godly body. He is now Krishna conscious. Why is he entering the Lord's body like a conditioned soul? And then the next verse says, Sahasra Yuga Paryante, with the expiration of 1,000 yuga cycles, or the equivalent. And Krishna talks about this in the Bhagavad Gita, about how Bhutva Bhuta Praliyate Sahasra Yuga Paryantam Ahurja Brahmano Vidu. They say that 1,000 yuga cycles is Brahma's day and 1,000 is his night. So during the night, there's not actually yugas going on, but it's that much time. So Sahasra Yuga Paryante is basically, it's just exactly what the Gita says. Sahasra Yuga Paryantam. So 1,000 yuga cycles expired, which are many millions of years. And Uttaya, rising up. So the Lord was lying down. Now Uttaya, rising up, idangsi sikshataha, and wanting to create again this material world. Then Marichi Mishra Rishayaha, the sages, such as Marichi, Prane Bhyo Hangcha Jagire, they were born from the Lord's breath. So you come into this gigantic body of Vishnu through the breath, and then you go out again from the breath. Krishna literally, or Vishnu, breathes out all these souls. And Narada says, Ahang Cha, and I too, me too. I mean, all these sages then took birth from the Lord's breath, and me too. I also, Ahang Cha. So why is Narada going through all this if he's already got a spiritual body? And that's the question that needs to be addressed here. A little more light. Better to see you, my dear. So one of the great Vaishnava commentators, Vangshidhara, addresses this point. I looked at the commentary for this series of verses. And this is what Vangshidhara says. And this is, I just did not a rough translation, it's an accurate translation, but I didn't bother to polish the English because but it's accurate. So some time ago, Vangshidhara says, while discussing the spiritual body, which just means a little while ago, a few verses ago, the point was raised that, I'm sorry, that's my writing. Okay, sorry. Here's Vangshidhara's commentary. Sorry about that. Vangshidhara says, however, because the Bhagavatam says this, however, someone's raising an argument. It may be argued that since you, Narada, someone may argue, Narada, because Narada's saying this. So someone may reply to Narada, okay, Narada, you're saying this, but what about this problem? So, however, since you, Narada, received an eternal body, Nitya Tanu, the pure godly body, since you received an eternal body, how in this age, the Swayambhuva Manvantara, how is it said that, quote, Narada was born, unquote, during his subsequent creation? Your birth, Narada, along with Brahma, is well known. So this very question, how, if you received a pure spiritual body, why did you take birth again in this world? And in reply, Narada could say, true, that's true. But even in the case of an eternal body, the Lord may do something for a specific pastime. And then, for example, the Lord enters the womb of Devaki. When Krishna appeared in the Bhagavatam, appeared in this world as described in the Bhagavatam 10th canto, even though Krishna has an eternal body, still he entered the womb of Devaki. And then Narada could say, I too, for the sake of the pastime of being Brahma's son, so at the end of the previous kalpa, so I took birth again. Even though I had a spiritual body, I took birth because it was supposed to happen as a pastime that I would be born as Brahma's son. And in that position, of course, Narada is going to preach all over the universe. So anyway, that's what Vangshidhara says, one of the great Vaishnava commentators. So that I want to bring up that point because often there are different theories, like how was Narada born again, as if he were a conditioned soul from the body of Vishnu, if he had already received a spiritual body. So I'm going to go on now to the next verse. So Narada's back in the universe. So now what's he going to do? He's come back into this universe and he says, Antar Bahischa Lokans Trin Paryemi. I wander the three worlds, Lokans Trin. I wander the three worlds, Antar Bahis, within and without. So that's very interesting. He's entering within the hearts of the conditioned soul through his preaching, through his singing, and he's going outside. So he's just all over the universe, and he's entering people's minds, entering their consciousness, traveling everywhere. Prabhupada called him the spiritual spaceman. So Antar Bahischa Lokans Trin Paryemi. Paryemi means I wander. I go around. Askandita Vrataha, and my vrata, my vow, his regular principles, he says, I never slip. I never fall from my vows. So he's a pure soul who is perfectly keeping his spiritual vows, going everywhere, seeing everything, and yet completely fixed in Krishna consciousness. Paryemi Askandita Vrataha, Anugrahan Mahavishnur. And this is by the mercy of Mahavishnu. So he was within Mahavishnu's body. So by the mercy of Mahavishnu, Avighata Gati Kochit, and my movement, Gati, Avighata is never blocked, is never impeded. I mean, Narada can go anywhere. He can go anywhere in the universe, and nothing can stop him. Avighata Gati Kochit. There's an ancient Platonic myth from Plato, I think it's called Gyges, where there apparently was some man who was an attendant to the king or something, where he got some magical thing. I can't remember, I think it was a ring. And this ring could make him invisible. And so what did he do? He used this power of invisibility to assassinate the king, enjoy the queen, which you can imagine, and basically just gratify himself. And so here we have a very different situation. Here we have Narada Muni, who's a pure devotee. And so it's interesting that he mentions a Skandita Vrataha, because if someone has the power to go anywhere, no one can stop them. You know, it's like that superhero, the Incredible Flash, he can do anything and then just flash away. And so if a conditioned soul had this power to go anywhere, no one could stop you. You can go within, go outside. You can just, they would probably use this power for a lot of unwholesome things. An ordinary person would use this power to enjoy in ways often that were not very nice. And yet Narada is saying that I have this power. I can go anywhere by Mahavishnu's mercy. And yet skanda means, in Sanskrit, skand means to slip or fall. And skandita means slipped or fallen. So askandita vrata, my vrata, my vow is askandita. Narada strictly follows his principles, always engaged in the Lord's service, even though he has this amazing power, which is impressive. So the next verse is Deva Dattam Imang Vinang Swara Brahma Vibhushitam Murcha Itva. So playing this musical instrument, this vina, Imang Vinam, this vina, which is Deva Dattam, God-given, literally God-given, Deva Datta. So playing, sounding this God-given vina, which is vibhushitam, adorned with or made opulent with swara brahma, music, spiritual music. Swara Brahma, Brahma, absolute truth, absolute experience in the form of music, in the form of melody. So Deva Dattam Imang Vinang Swara Brahma Vibhushitam Murchitva Harikatam Gayamanas Charamiham. And so singing Gayamana from the same root as the word Gita, song. So Gayamanas, singing Harikata. Narada is, he's quite a person. I mean, Narada Muni is a very impressive devotee. He's pure, fixed in his vows. He can go anywhere in the universe. He does go everywhere in the universe. No one can stop him. He's pure. He's singing these beautiful, enchanting songs about the Lord, playing this instrument. It's always on tour. I mean, he does this concert tour all over the universe, but he does it as a pure devotee, enlightening the universe. So Narada Muni is a most impressive soul. If you really think about it, what he's doing, it's pretty amazing. So that's Narada Muni. Then we're coming toward the end of the chapter. Then he says, Pragayatak swaviryani tirthapadak priyaksava ahuta eva me shigrang darshanang yati chetasi. So, Pragayatak Swaviryani, as I am singing, and not only Gayataha, but Pragayata, he's like singing forth. He's really singing. As I'm singing his heroic deeds, his adventures, his feats, what Krishna says, as I'm singing about them, Tirthapada, the Lord himself was Tirthapada, which means wherever his feet step becomes a holy place. Tirthapada. He is himself a holy place, and wherever he goes, just by walking there, going there, stepping there, he transforms any place into a holy place. And Priyakshava, and it is a real pleasure to hear about him. So this is how Narada describes Krishna. Krishna has unlimited names, but here Narada calls Krishna Tirthapada and Priyakshava. And so Ahuta Eva. So as I'm singing about him, as if I were summoning him, Ahuta Eva, as if I were summoning him, Me Shigrang Darshan Jati Chetasi. He very quickly, literally goes to my seeing. In other words, he becomes visible to me. That's how in Sanskrit it sounds very good. English it sounds a little awkward, but not in Sanskrit. So Ahuta Eva me shigram dar, he comes within my sight quickly, as if I had summoned him. And Chetasi, within my mind, within my consciousness. So as if, and here Chetas can mean consciousness, mind, it can also mean heart. So Prabhupada translates it here, on the seat of my heart, Chetas, mind, consciousness, or heart. So another beautiful verse. Narada Muni has this extraordinary relationship with Krishna. I mean, this is, you want to talk about happiness? This is happiness. Narada Muni, he has this, he can just go anywhere in the universe. No one can stop him. Inside, outside, just this complete, total freedom of movement. And he's just singing about the glories of the Lord. And when he does that, Krishna, as if he's being summoned by Narada, serving his devotee, he quickly or at once, he just appears. He becomes visible within Narada's mind or within his heart. As they say, what a life. So the next verse, etadhi, which means it is really this. Etadhi atura chittanang mata sparsi chayamuhu bhavasindhu plavodrashto haricharyanu varnam. Very nice. So I'll have to put this in English syntax, English word order. So for those whose minds are suffering, there's a contrast here because from the same root you get the word chetas, or a similar root chetas, then the word chit, which also means consciousness, chitta. So Narada says, for those whose chitta, atura chittanam, for those whose mind, whose consciousness, Prabhupada says, are always full of cares and anxieties, atura. Cares and anxieties, troubles, atura. So for those whose minds are always disturbed, always full of trouble, full of problems, matra sparshi chayamuhu. And why all these troubles? Is because people always have the desire, ichaya, literally to touch or to have contact with sense objects. So matra, as in Krishna in the Gita says, matra sparshas tu konteya. So matra sparsha in Sanskrit means contact with, or literally wanting to touch the sense objects through your different senses. Your eyes, in that sense, touch visible objects, and your ears touch sounds and so on. So matra sparsha, ichaya, because we always want to enjoy the sense objects. We always want to enjoy the sense objects. We want to touch through our different senses the sense objects. Therefore, our minds are always disturbed. We always have problems. And so, and therefore we are in Bhava Sindhu. Bhava Sindhu means the material ocean, the ocean of birth and death. But Narada says that the plava means the raft or the boat, literally that which floats. And so the boat to take you across the material ocean, drishta, has been seen. There is now, or Prabhupada translates it, experienced, literally seen, and then, or in the sense of experienced, is now come into view. And what is that? It is certainly this, Narada says, Haricharyanu Varnanam. It is constant recitation of the activities of Hari, of the Lord. Beautiful verse. I mean, I won't go into all the technical reasons why, but in Sanskrit you have a lot more freedom of word order because it's an inflected language, and so the great transcendental poets and writers like Vyasa, they take advantage of this you could say a syntactic flexibility of Sanskrit. It has tremendous freedom of word order, and everything still remains completely clear. And so you can do amazing things poetically with this linguistic freedom. Syntax means the word order, so syntactic freedom. So etadhya sura chittanang matrasparshi chayamuhu bhavasindhu plavo drishto haricharyanu varnanam. Beautiful verse. So after that, Jamadivir yoga patai kama loba hato muhu Mukunda sevaya jadvat tatadmadha nashamyati. So yoga patai means by the yoga paths. By the yoga paths. In other words, the eightfold yoga, the 8 procedures or the 8 paths, the 8 processes of yoga. Yamadi, which begin with yama. So that's Ashtanga yoga, yama, niyama, asana, and so on. So here it said by the yoga paths, literally, or by the yoga procedures beginning with yama, kama lobha hato muhu, that one can always suppress or vanquish lust and greed. Kama lobha hato, one can repress lust and greed. But mukunda sevaya, the way you can do this, the way you can control your material desires, which remember from the previous verse, are why our minds are troubled. That's why we have problems. It's because we're trying to enjoy the material world, touch the sense objects. And so therefore, this lust and greed, because that's what it is. When we want to enjoy the material world, it's lust and greed. And so we can vanquish this lust and greed. It can be hata, it can be stopped, or it can be suppressed, or by the yoga paths, the yoga procedures beginning with yama, but not as effectively, not in the same way that you can overcome your material desires and therefore find real peace. Mukunda sevaya, by serving Mukunda, by serving Krishna. So tatha, in that way, atma, the soul, adha, directly, precisely, nashamyati, the soul cannot be directly pacified. It cannot find the same peace through the yoga, Ashtanga yoga, that it can find through the peace the soul can find by serving the Lord, by Krishna consciousness, by serving Krishna. So even though the Ashtanga yoga works, but not as effectively, not to the same extent, it's better just to serve Krishna. It will be much more effective, faster, and in every way better by serving Krishna. So in this verse, Narada acknowledges Ashtanga yoga is a bona fide process, but not the best process. So now Narada's concluding. He says, Sarvam tadidang akyatam. All of this has been explained. This has all been explained. Yet prishto hung tvayanaga, that which you questioned me about. So you asked me questions like, tell me about your life or whatever. So whatever you asked me, anaga, O sinless Vyasa, all of that has been explained. Janma karma rahasyang me, the mystery of my birth and activities. It's interesting. Krishna also, of course, famously in the Gita says, Janma karma me cha divyam, my divine birth and activities, one who knows them never takes birth again. And here, of course, we're talking about a pure devotee of Krishna, the great Narada Muni, and he also uses the term Janma karma, my birth and activities. And he says the mystery of my birth and activities, Janma karma rahasyang me, bhavatas chatmatoshanam, has all been explained to you, atmatoshanam, and it satisfies the soul. By hearing about the life, in this case, the lives, more than one life, of pure devotees, atmatoshanam, it satisfies the soul. And Narada says it satisfies your soul. This will satisfy your soul. This will bring you the peace that you wanted. So it's very interesting that when Narada first came, he said, oh my God, Vyasa, what did you do? Like writing all these karma kanda literatures. He basically said, this is really a mess. I mean, he used stronger words than mess. He said, Jugupsitam. This is horrible. Dharma Kritain, what you've done, for the sake of Dharma. He said, Mahan Vyatikrama, literally a great transgression. So, and Narada said, and obviously that's why you're frustrated. And Vyasa already knew that. He said, I think this is the reason. So now, back then, Narada told Vyasa, you need to really just preach directly. Don't hold back. Don't try to compensate for the fact that people may not want to hear about Krishna, or just tell the truth. Just give it straight. Don't worry about how people react. Just give pure Krishna consciousness. And so to encourage him, Narada says, well, here's my life because you want to hear about it. So the life of Narada is an example of what Vyasa now has to do in the Bhagavatam, which of course he does because it's included in the Bhagavatam. So Narada is getting Vyasa started. Here's the kind of story you need to tell. And so in a sense, now that Vyasa is going to, of course, follow what Narada said. And so the first story we get is the story narrated by Narada himself, the very Krishna conscious story of his own liberation. So that's it. Then Sutu Vacha, the last verse, which is very important. I want to read a little bit of Prabhupada's purport because it's I believe, an extremely important purport. Sutu Vacha evam sambhasha bhagavan narado vasavi sutam. So thus speaking to Vasavi Sutta, which means Vyasa, the son of Vasavi, which means Satyavati, the daughter of the Emperor Vasu. That's from the Mahabharata, chapter 57. So Vasavi Sutta means Vyasa, the son of Satyavati, who's the daughter of Vasu. Narado Vasavi Sutam amantriya vinam ranayan yayo yadrachiko muni. So taking his leave. This is a very polite, it's a very polite culture. So amantriya, taking his leave, and vinam ranayan, stroking, vibrating his vina. Yayo yadrachiko muni. The sage, the Muni Narada, then went, Yadrachiko, Narada departed. Narada, who has complete freedom. He can go wherever he likes, Yadrachiko. So, I'm going to read, Prabhupada translates this as dog going by. That was not scheduled as part of the Bhagavatam class. The dog continues. Well, let me just 1 second. I'll close the door. Don't go away. So, Prabhupada says, this is, I think, perhaps Prabhupada's most powerful purport on freedom, on the freedom that we want. Every living being is anxious for full freedom because that is his transcendental nature. In that sense, John Locke was right. The English political philosopher and other kinds of philosopher, we said that it is the nature of a person, like we are sort of, our natural state is freedom. And therefore, he said the state has to justify passing laws. There was a leader, a king, a government. It can't simply restrict us however it likes. It has to rationally justify impinging upon or limiting our natural state, which is freedom. So it's nice to see that John Locke got that right. So Prabhupada says every living being is anxious for full freedom because that is his transcendental nature. The problem is it's not our material nature all the time. Materially, we become slaves of our senses. We sometimes follow the wrong people, but at least our original spiritual nature, so Locke got it half right, our transcendental nature is to be anxious for full freedom. This freedom is obtained. So how do you get this freedom? Only through the transcendental service of the Lord. illusioned by the external energy. Everyone thinks that he is free, but actually he's bound up by the laws of nature. A conditioned soul cannot freely move from one place to another, even on this earth, and what to speak of one planet to another. But a full-fledged free soul, like Narada, always engaged in chanting the Lord's glory, is free to move, not only on earth, but also in any part of the universe, as well as in any part of the spiritual sky. We can just imagine the extent and unlimitedness of his freedom, which is as good as that of the Supreme Lord. There is no reason or obligation for his traveling, and no one can stop him from his free movement. Similarly, this is very important, similarly, the transcendental system of devotional service is also free. It may or may not develop in a particular person, even after he undergoes all the detailed formulas, which means you cannot simply agyata sukriti someone into their own Krishna consciousness. In other words, we can't simply manipulate people by getting them to eat prasadam or putting a harinam on their path so they can't avoid it. I mean, that helps, but ultimately you can't make somebody a devotee. They have to choose to be a devotee. It's something that someone has to choose. Prabhupada says devotional service is also free. It may or may not develop in a particular person even after he undergoes all the detailed formulas. Similarly, the association of the devotee is also free. One may be fortunate to have it, or one may not have it, even after thousands of endeavors. Of course, there's some logic here. Krishna says in the Gita that I reciprocate with everyone. I'm equal to everyone. And a devotee following Krishna fairly reciprocates with people. So it's not enough to make an endeavor. We have to correctly endeavor, humbly. And if we're not humble, if we are not respectful toward the Lord and his devotees, and even though we may try to get their association, we may not achieve it. Therefore, and this is the conclusion, and this is, I think, extremely important statement from Prabhupada. Therefore, in all spheres of devotional service, freedom is the main pivot. Everything goes on the pivot. Everything moves around freedom. Without freedom, there is no execution of devotional service. This is very important. So you can't make someone unconsciously serve Krishna. That's the point. By agyata sukriti. It's nice, it helps, but you cannot make someone serve Krishna. They have to choose. Without freedom, there is no execution of devotional service. So people will make significant advancement, not by our manipulating them by sort of, in a very sort of sneaky way, giving them prasadam and they don't know what it is, or we kind of put a Harinam party right in their path so they don't want to hear it. They're not necessarily interested, but we got you. It's like one of those ISKCON gotcha moments where, we got you to hear it. And so on. And so those things are nice. I'm not saying they don't help, but Prabhupada says here clearly, without freedom, there is no execution of devotional service. People can really serve Krishna when they choose to serve Krishna. So I think we should focus more on persuasion, maybe less on manipulation. The freedom surrendered to the Lord does not mean that the devotee becomes dependent in every respect. In other words, it's not that Prabhupada, as a pure devotee, has no freedom to sometimes his own views or to have his own preferences. He's just this almost robotic, surrendered instrument of Krishna. So Prabhupada never actually speaks or does anything. It's Krishna speaking and acting through him, which would mean that the more you become Krishna conscious, the less of a real person you are, which would be a completely insane conclusion. The more you become Krishna conscious, the more you become yourself, the more you become a free, unique individual. And so Prabhupada says, without freedom, there's no execution of devotional service. The freedom surrendered to the Lord, as in the case of a pure devotee like Prabhupada, does not mean that the devotee becomes dependent in every respect. And so in terms of understanding Prabhupada, the different kinds of statements he made and which ones are absolute, in terms of understanding how we bring conditioned souls to Krishna consciousness, we need to keep this purport in mind. To surrender unto the Lord through the transparent medium of the spiritual master is to attain complete freedom of life. So the more we are Krishna conscious, the freer we are, not the more robotic we are. And of course, the more we are Krishna conscious, the more we naturally do the right thing. Not because someone is just doing it through us and we don't do anything, but out of love, we do what will please the person we love. And in this case, we know the person we love, Krishna, is also infinitely good in moral terms. Krishna is infinitely good. Everything that Krishna desires is for the greatest good of every soul, and therefore to love Krishna and to simply do what pleases him is naturally to act in a perfectly moral way, to do what is best for all souls, and to do so freely, to do it freely. So that is what I wanted to say there. Okay, so thank you all very much. I hope everyone is staying safe, and I hope that everyone is thinking of Krishna. Thank you all very much for listening, and I hope to see you again, or hope we'll be together again next week. Hare Krishna.